Please join me in welcoming Chris Thayer.
Thanks, Katie. I just wanted everybody to bear with me. This is my first talk in front of any conference, so there's a small chance I may run out the door and back to my car. So, and thanks for laughing at that. That makes this chance a little bit smaller. So, so I just wanted to start a little bit with my background. Let's see if I can get this to work. Maybe. Yeah, I was gonna say which I'm afraid to hit any of the other buttons that don't look like arrows. There we go. Okay. All right. So I'm from St. Louis, Missouri. So I have 7 years background in information security. Almost all of it's in IR, working for MasterCard. So I've worked on started in their security operations center. I've worked on their design and architecture team. I've worked on their threat intelligence team. And currently I'm the technical lead for their digital forensics lab. So overall, I am a blue teamer at heart. I remember, has anyone played StarCraft at all? I remember as a kid, I played StarCraft. I loved playing it. I always had more fun building up defenses than I did actually attacking people, which is anyone who's played the game knows that's not a good way to win. So that's something I've actually taken into my career a little bit. I don't do pen testing professionally, but I have a lab where I try to keep my skills up because I think it's important when we're dealing from the defensive side. So MasterCard, our digital forensics lab, is an ANAB accredited lab, which means we have lots of policies and procedures we have to follow, along with evidence handling and chain of custody and all that. There are also certain roles built out where I said I was tech lead. There's a couple of roles that are built out with ANAB procedures. So we handle everything, all internal investigations from malware to web application possible compromises. As tech lead, I'm also responsible for creating new investigation procedures, evaluating new software, hardware, and kind of implementing that. And then on top of that, we recently, as Katie mentioned, I kind of started a one-man threat hunting program there. And the reason I wanted to mention this, I don't want you to feel sorry for me because I have lots to do. I think that's a real common problem in our industry. So anything I can do to save time, any kind of automation I can do, I try to do it. And I think that there's a lot of people in that same boat kind of in here, which is one of the reasons I think we're all here in like ATT&CK, because they do a lot of hard work that can save us a lot of time. All right. Let's try this other one. There we go. The other one is probably a little more batteries. All right, so I wanted to kind of go over the agenda real quick. So the first part is MITRE ATT&CK doesn't need to be complex. The second part that we're going to go over is I kind of just wanted to throw a definition of what threat hunting is, mainly because I think that there are a lot of different definitions out there. It's kind of been one of those buzzwords, and I think that at least for this presentation, I wanted to define it so we all kind of were on the same page. I wanted to talk about our first phase, which was I call it just before attack, and then phase 2 after attack. And then we'll just go through if we have time, some questions and answers. So I wanted to talk about, we've seen a lot of presentations this morning where everyone talked about implementing attack in their own way, and one of the common trends is it's complex. There's a lot to do here. We saw one of the earlier presentations talked about, if you're really going to do this right, it probably is going to take a year at your organization. And I know most of these big organizations, everything kind of moves slow because it's not just you. You got to get a lot of people's buy-ins. A lot of this process is manual where you have to score it and map it, report on it, and convince everyone this is worth doing. And sometimes that involves a lot of teams getting them together and make sure they work. So I kind of wanted to bring our story together because I think that it's a way where you can use ATT&CK and kind of pick and choose what you use. And you can do as little or as much as you want, and you're the ones that decide where to go as you use ATT&CK. I did also want to mention that even though when I talked about us implementing it, we actually are doing that, and if you're doing that, don't stop. It's great. This is just kind of a complement to that. So what is threat hunting? So I recently did about 6 or 7 interviews for our team with an open position, and I think every single person had threat hunting on their resume. And so I asked him about it because I was interested in it because of this program. So one of the guys said he was just making SIM alerts. Another person said they're querying their SIM for IOCs they found. Another person said they were patching vulnerabilities. Another person said they went around and were fixing bad policies. And then one guy even told me he was just looking for failed logins throughout the environment. And all these are good, we should be doing them, but I really wouldn't consider any of those threat hunting. So I threw up the definition I found online that I thought kind of fit it best, and it's the process of proactively and iteratively searching through systems to detect and isolate advanced threats that evade existing security solutions. So I threw up the threat hunting loop also. I think it's important to see there. You start with a hypothesis. You kind of investigate it through tools and techniques, and you uncover new patterns. We already talked about TTPs earlier. I think it's important if you don't uncover new patterns too. I think that both of those processes can provide you with good information, but then you kind of do analytics. You make some detections and see how can I deploy this throughout my entire environment. So really, to me, I feel like the hardest part of this isn't necessarily the investigate or the analytics. We kind of do that every day in our job. I think the hardest part was always creating that hypothesis, trying to figure out what really is bad, what indicates something's bad out there. And it kind of goes back to that pyramid of pain where it's always easier to implement the IOC that we find than actually look for that behavior that's bad. And then kind of uncovering the new tactics and techniques and procedures as they come out. Before attack, you used to have to go through and search through a whole bunch of tweets, a whole bunch of blog posts, white papers. You have to scour the internet to try to figure out what's going on here. So I'll start at the beginning of the program. So like I said, I've worked in IR at MasterCard for around 7 years in different areas. We spend a fair amount of money on information security. We have expensive perimeter defenses. We got a whole bunch of agents going around. All of our logging's centralized. There's well thought out architecture and policy, and we work real hard to keep up with patching and new vulnerabilities. I thought we're in a pretty good spot. Going through, we work hard. We do all this good stuff. And then I went to my first DEF-CON, and I remember the very first talk I saw was by a guy named Mark Newland, and it was an amazing talk. He had found vulnerabilities inside common wireless mice and keyboards where he could perform replay attacks. He could do this from 200 meters away, and he could essentially do anything he wanted to your computer if you're using one of those mice or keyboards. So he did what any DEF-CON presenter would do. He created a small Nintendo remote, and he proceeded to mess with all the other presenters. And then the next year, he came and talked about it and showed everybody. Unfortunately, even after he reported a lot of these vulnerabilities, because of the nature of those mice and keyboards, they were unpatchable. So these are probably, if you go watch that talk, you could probably still do this to a lot of people today. It was really interesting. So I kind of thought about this, and I'm going, well, I don't have a good defense against this with all the money we're spending, everything we're doing. I can't detect this. I would hope one of our other layers would. Maybe the web proxy would block it, or the antivirus might see it. But if I have this much control, I could literally write the malware on your computer with the keystrokes, with the script. So it kind of blew me away and changed a lot of my worldview. And then I saw about 20 more talks after that of all this that scared me just as much. So I came back and I just thought, we got to figure out how can I do more? How can we figure out how to be more secure? So everybody's kind of heard that old saying where dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. So I love this cartoon. You see the boss, he's putting up the sign, dress for the job you want, not for the job you have. And everybody comes in wearing superhero outfits, and Darth Vader and Gandalf shows up. So I'm not as big a fan as dress for the job you want and instead of the job you have, but I am a big fan of, in my experience, doing the job you want. That will eventually turn into that becoming your job. So I'll give you an example. When I was in college, I worked for a very small woodworking machinery dealership. And I was actually a chemistry major in college. And so all I was doing all day there was scanning in their literature. They were in the process of making it so the salesman didn't have to carry around a briefcase that was this big. And so as I was doing that, I started realizing a lot of these other people are having problems on their computers. They're just little troubleshooting problems, and I started troubleshooting those. I started dealing with network problems, and it eventually turned into I learned ASP.NET and was doing their entire website. And this turned into a job they essentially didn't realize they needed at that time. When I left, they had to replace me. So it's kind of bad. It also changed the course of my career because I stopped being a chemistry major and started looking into computers. So this is what I did here. I came back from DEF CON and I thought, we got to do more. So I started meeting with teams and started brainstorming, how can we do this? How can we actually provide more security for our business and for our team? So I noticed one of our big gaps is we had a lot of agents on our host, but our logging wasn't that great there. And we didn't have what we wanted. So that was the first thing we did. I created a deployable package to pull data from hosts. We were pulling mainly auto-run data, execution data. This was before we had a lot of process monitoring, which those guys have seen the data source and attack covers a lot. So it's something really nice to have, especially if it's centralized. We're also pulling running processes and just looking for things that, possible Windows processes that weren't spawned by the right thing, SCV host, or SVC host not spawned by services, things like that. Then we would take it, we'd combine it all, and had a few Python scripts that would kind of analyze it. And it was real slow. So we were doing it from one server we had, we were dropping executables for tools. It was real slow. It was real inefficient. But at the same time, we were still moderately successful. We found a ton of adware, which I don't care about as much, but I don't necessarily want that on the workstations. But we also found 2 rats. And that was pretty amazing that two pretty bad infections would have sat there without the program. So I thought we're doing a pretty good job. I like this. I felt like pretty successful. So I met with a team member and we decided we should make a pitch to management. See, we should be doing this full time. If we're getting this much success with just something we're doing behind the scenes, we should take it farther, see what they say. And so we set up a meeting with our vice president. We created a roadmap. We created a mission statement, all of these things, and kind of like essentially a 5-year plan. Sat down with him, and he really liked it. And he said, I'm going to take this up to my management. So we took it up, and they also had good things to say, but then they came back and said, well, we don't have a lot of budget. There's a lot of people asking for extra headcount. And, that's kind of the way it goes. They said, we'll do this for you. We won't give you any extra resources, but we'll give you some time. So they said, so I don't know, like I mentioned earlier, I'm from Missouri. Does anyone know the Missouri state motto? Show me. Yeah, show me state. And that's what they said. So they said, show me that this is worth a full team's time or a full person's time. I said, we'll give you some time, but I want to see more. So that's what we did. unfortunately, it dawned on me that, oh no, now they know about this. What do we do now? Because we actually have to perform, and they're watching and expecting things. So I came back and decided, first of all, that as everybody knows in this industry, nothing stays static for long. Doing these same things over and over is not going to help you. So I decided we have to make a new program. We have to start from scratch. What we're doing now isn't real efficient, and it's not going to I'm not going to keep finding new things. And I have to do that with 20% of a person. So they essentially gave me about a day a week. They said, spend on this. Of course, my other job was still there, so it wasn't even always a day a week. So I had to do that with just the feet and ankles, pretty much. So the first thing I realized is that getting 1,000 hosts a month is not sustainable. We have to make this more efficient. So we were in the process of actually rolling out some more PowerShell remoting for our admin team, and that was the avenue I took to start looking at this. So we started. I don't know how many people are familiar with Conza. It's a PowerShell incident response framework. I'm currently using a very heavily modified version of Conza, but the Conza isn't necessarily an important part. The important part is that we use the advantages of PowerShell remoting. So we could do parallel processing. We could reach out to multiple hosts at once, use their resources instead of ours. But also because we were using PowerShell, I went from deploying some executables or deploying other people's tools to now I have the freedom to write my own. And I can pull just about anything I want, which is great, but it also goes back to that threading loop. I start having to do research. How do I figure out what I want to pull? There's all kinds of stuff, and as soon as I pull too much data, I'm going to be in real trouble because there's only one person looking through it all right now. So that's when I found ATT&CK, and it was great to me because a lot of the other frameworks I've seen stopped at techniques. Or stopped at tactics, and I needed techniques. I needed to figure out. I needed something deeper that was more specific. We started using ATT&CK with this, where because I had built out the framework there, I could write 3-4 lines of code in a PowerShell module and pull back information that I could use on a technique, and I didn't have to do it all at once. I could do it piece by piece by piece. I actually mainly focused on our gaps because I knew I had worked in IR there so long. I knew where our gaps were, and I knew constantly where we couldn't see. And I knew also that we were fixing them. But in a large organization, there's a lot of change control. There's a lot of process built around infrastructure, and it takes time. So a lot of times you know about those gaps for months before you can get a fix on. And this way, we could take this, write a few lines in a PowerShell script, and cover that attack pretty much enterprise, or cover that technique pretty much enterprise-wide. The greatest thing here is since this is there and it was easy now, I could do this at scale. I could push it all out to everyone, and all of a sudden we're covered, as opposed to deploying hardware or deploying even an agent could be rough because you have to go through the testing, we have to go through everything else. And this was great because I'm minimally invasive here. I just pull the data, I get out, and then I'll see you at the next time we come. Low resource cost, which is really the most important thing for me because I still had to do my other job, and we had to somehow accomplish this. And ATT&CK was the reason we were able to do this because of I essentially shifted the resource cost from us to all the rest of the community and everyone creating these here. So it was a great, as far as I was concerned, it's a great switch there. The other great thing is that it covers major OSs. So far I've been talking about Windows, but that wasn't our goal. I wanted to expand this out to our whole environment, which means we need Macs and we need Linux in there. And I'll tell you, I'm fine dealing with Linux. I'm not a big Mac guy. So having these actual techniques out there where I can read them and understand them and compare them to other techniques that I might be more familiar with was great. So this was phase 2 after ATT&CK. let's see. So there's some things that we kept going strong. I still run monthly stints, but instead of going to 1,000 hosts, I'm now collecting data from 30,000 hosts, both Windows and Macs, and we have our Linux side kind of in production right now. And that really is my goal for this whole thing, is to be able to hit the entire environment, and then we can slowly continually add more and more techniques in there. So I'll tell you right now, I think we're at 31 techniques, but I've proved this out enough where I actually got some help. So we have more people helping me, and we're expanding those all the time. And like I said, there's been a lot of talk of threat intel and adversaries here, threat actors. I'm going to take that back and probably do some more research there to the point where maybe we start looking at specific adversaries that are targeting us. But right now, I've been trying to fill our gaps that we know about that maybe we're going to have a solution in place, but we're months away. This way I can fill that, and we can go back up and say, hey, we got some mitigation here so we can buy some time until we get something permanent in there that may be a little better, maybe hitting it more than once a month on there. What's also nice about this is that I'm boning from one server right now. Our plan is to get this closer and closer to hitting the entire environment in a week or so. So the other nice stat is that we've actually been responsible for finding 15% of our malware incidents this year, and it's no longer the low-risk adware click fraud. We've been finding real things that are concerning, which is even a little more frustrating to me, because then they come back to my team where I have to do more investigation, and I have less time to work on this stuff. The other great thing about this is that this has helped our SOC a ton. So as I've made these tools, I've been providing them to our SOC. And what's great about this is that not only can they go from maybe manually looking at a workstation or a server after an alert, they can pull back this information automatically. But it also gets our analysts that maybe don't have more experience, that have a little less experience, they start asking, why are you looking at this? Why is this part important here? And so we've essentially cut down the time it takes to train our SOC analysts, because they can use the tools we create here, and it points out areas that they should be looking at in their investigation. And so it's been great for them. They all love that they have these tools now where they can do this quickly. So I wish that I could come out and say that I now have run a team with our threat hunting program, but we're not there yet. One day we may be. I'm still proving this out. We were a little late to the game. We started using ATT&CK. I started the phase 2 probably around January of this year. So we've had some time to get stats, but we're still working at this, still trying to get it going. But I can also say that I wouldn't have been able to do this with the time that I had, and I wouldn't have been successful. It's without ATT&CK, without the information provided there, that saved me so much time researching and so much time looking and proving out what was going on. So, and the last thing I just wanted to hit on again is that with us using this, we can implement it slowly. We can pick and choose what we're most worried about and kind of go through there.